How you start your website should be like how you start your day. I like to start with a fresh shave and a filtered shower. Then I'll prepare a fresh cup of Brita water to heat it up.
He's heating up.
Before I get a scoop or two of fresh ground coffee. I'll pour in the hot water into my French press. Then I'll let it brew, and this is where you gotta be patient, y'all. So in the meantime, I'll continue preparing by adding almond milk, because the regular milk just don't do the body good, if you know what I mean. Let's top it off with a little bit of that sugar, and yes, I said sugar, right before we press that launch button. And now it's time for blast off. Let's go! Woo! Oh yeah, and don't forget to stir it up some to blend in those flavors.
He's on fire.
And that's how we start Fresh on WordPress.
He's on fire.
Welcome to Lesson 7. In this lesson, we are going to discuss the concepts or my overall strategy for optimizing your WordPress site for speed. Now, I'm not going to dive too deep into setting everything up because I want to get more feedback from you all when it comes to your approach or what you're using, so that way I can tailor the official course more towards that direction. However, this is my thought process and workflow when I'm optimizing a website for speed. All right, so right now I have a fresh installation of WordPress, and I've already added some plugins just so that way I already have a few activated. However, I still want you all to see what my thought process is when we're optimizing a WordPress website for speed. First things first, let's talk about caching. So caching is a very sensitive topic because it really involves a lot of different nuances and a lot of different technologies. However, I think most importantly, it really depends on your hosting, because if you go to WordPress, and whether you're in the WordPress repo or you go to wordpress.org and go to that repository, if you type in the word cache, you're going to see there are plenty of options for caching on WordPress. The simplest way I'm going to explain caching for now is basically just a way for your website to have a static or a snapshot. I'm going to use that word snapshot instead of static because I know there's people that are going to be like, no, there's some dynamicness in it too. I get it. So the way I want to simplify it for a person like myself who can be a simpleton, I like to think of it as a snapshot. When a person goes to your website multiple times, after the first time, does it still load fast? That to me is one of the best ways to describe caching, because what it's doing is it's kind of taking a snapshot of your website for that person so it loads quickly. When people go to the website for the first time, normally that's going to be slower than them coming back the second time. Now, there are ways that you can, defeat this process by deleting all your cache in your own browser. So have you ever, been on Google or Safari and you want to delete your site cookies, your history, and it also says delete cache? Well, if you delete the cache, well, then when you go to a website, it's kind of like it's going to start all over again. So therefore, yeah, it's going to load slow again. But then when you come back to it, if a person or a company or the website has caching enabled, it should load faster for you. That's an experience that you want on your website. Now, like I said, there are so many nuances to caching: server-based caching, browser-based caching, there's CDN caching. There's so much caching. I don't want to get into all that in this. I think that we just need to simplify it for now, and I'm going to give you my concepts. And then for the official course, we going to dive deep. We going to dig in it, okay? Like we dig it for gold. So I just want to let y'all know that right now. All right. So as I just mentioned, for caching, we have light speed cache, W3 total cache, WP optimized cache, WP fastest cache, WP super cache. There's so much caching plugins out there. It's ridiculous, right? Even Redis or Redis cache. I never know how to say that. And then I use SiteGround as hosting. And I also use Kinsta as hosting. SiteGround has its own caching plugin. So if I type in SG Optimizer, hopefully I spelled that right. If I didn't, oh well. So we can see here, Speed Optimizer. This is by SiteGround. It's only going to work for those using the hosting of SiteGround. The same thing with Kinsta, for instance. You're not going to find Kinsta's caching plugin on here, right? So if I type in Kinsta, you're not going to find the Kinsta cache plugin. Nope, you don't see that here. And then another caching plugin that I use. So I use, as I mentioned, I'll use SiteGround's Optimizer when I'm using websites on my SiteGround hosting. And then I'll use Kinsta's caching when I'm using websites on my Kinsta hosting. But here's the best part, and this is what I love about using third-party tools that are compatible with other hosting providers. One of my favorite caching plugins, and I call this almost a set it and forget it. Yes, there's other settings you can do to make it better, but I have not found a caching plugin yet that the moment that you activate it on your website just has this magic boost of speed. Other caching plugins, you have to do more setup to get them to perform the way you want them to perform. But with WP Rocket, it's one of those ones where it's priceless for me, what it does. And also just know it's not free. So yes, it comes with a price, but I believe it's priceless because it does so much without the average person having to do too much. And that's why I like WP Rocket. For me, these other caching plugins, you have to know a little bit about what you're doing. And that could be as easy as you watching a YouTube video. But that's why I said we're going to save those meat and potatoes for later. For now, I just want to give you all the concepts of how I believe from a minimal standpoint, you need to optimize your website for speed. Because this is a big topic that a lot of people either get wrong or don't understand. So first things first, decide what caching plugin you want to use. Just make a decision and make that decision based on your hosting. Look up what hosting you have and what caching plugins are normally compatible with it, or what is the general norm or census when it comes to caching on your particular hosting. That's key. WP Rocket works on a variety of hosting platforms because it's not meant for one hosting. And for us, I remember that we weren't using it for a while because we were using Kinsta's caching, and then WP Rocket had an update and says now we're compatible with Kinsta. So it's like, wow, we can have the best of both worlds, really fast hosting with a really great caching plugin. So that's key. Decide your caching plugin. I've installed these right here just to show you all an example of what they may look like on the back end because, you know, some people may be confused. So I'm going to go to my plugins. Here's another tip that you need to know and understand if you haven't heard it before. Do not use two different caching plugins on your website. Again, I repeat, do not use and activate two different caching plugins on your website. That will cause so many issues. It's not a situation where you're like, well, if I double down, if I double stack it, you know, if I get a double stack, triple stack, you know, burger from Wendy's or McDonald's is going to be better. It don't work like that with caching. So don't double stack the caching. Now, I'm going to turn on Lightspeed Cache, for example, here. And then you'll see it right here. And then we have a dashboard, right? So we can see all of our information at a glance here. And then if I go to cache, this is where you'll decide what features and what options you want to use. You do not want or even need to use everything that comes with the caching plugin. You have to be careful. And that's why I say you got to know a little bit about what you're doing when it comes to caching, because you can mess your site up real easily when it comes to caching, or you can mess up the experiences for users. So just know that. You want to know a little bit about what you're doing by watching a YouTube video, okay? The other thing I want you to notice is that not only do we see cache, we're going to get into the next part here, which is optimizing for images. But first, I just want to show you that they have image optimization and they even have CDN, I'm assuming integration. I don't use this caching plugin. I'm not going to lie to you all. I just told you all what I use, but I know everybody doesn't have access. So I want to give you all some other options so that way you have some thought process on what you want to use. Okay, so that's key too. But if you are using a CDN, and I'll get to that in a second, you typically can integrate your CDN with your caching plugin. Those are the best caching plugins when you can do so, okay? Let me get out of here. Let's go back to plugins installed. I'm going to deactivate Lightspeed. Then I'm going to activate W3 Total Cache. Here, We have way more options, or at least a bigger menu here. But as you can see, they also have CDN as well. Let me go to general settings here. Well, I'll first go to the dashboard so you can see what that looks like. So we can see this dashboard. I'll accept this. This dashboard is a little different, but they also have image optimization, lazy load. And see this page cache, database cache, object cache, browser cache. It's a lot of cache in here, like Johnny Cache. But if I were you, I would really look at, what do I need? Do I need all these options? And how is it going to work with my hosting? That is key. Now, sometimes you'll see these other options here and you'll need an add-on, like it'll add another plugin, or you'll have to add on or pay for another service. So you got to be careful of that too. I've been caught with that before. So please be careful of that. I'm going to skip this so we can see our total dashboard here. And at a glance, we can see we have a few things. Now, what I like about this, and I'll get to that in a second, just like what I said with the CDN, we have another CDN configuration opportunity here. So this is really good when you're thinking about your caching option. And I'm going to say, start here. After you pick the right hosting and you're like, okay, I still need my website to be fast, you have to think about that cache, right? If you want to think about fast, think about that cache. And I ain't talking about the dollar bill, y'all, but at the same time I am, because it will save you a lot of money. People can't buy what they don't see. So if they go to your website, it's loading slow, guess what? You about to get a no-go. So you have to have some cache in order to get that cache. You feel me? All right, so let's just start there. I'm gonna go back to plugins installed, and I'm going to deactivate W3 Total Cache. Now, the next thing I want to talk about is image optimization. So with image optimization, and as I just showed you, sometimes caching plugins will have an add-on or they'll have a feature within the caching plugin. You can choose how you want to go. I don't like to always use the features within the caching plugin. Sometimes I want multiple points of failure. Now, some people are thinking, well, why would you want multiple points of failure? Because I don't want the one thing that I'm counting on. If that goes down, then all those features inside of it, they go down too. Sometimes it's good not to have consolidation. Sometimes it's good to have consolidation. You have to choose which route you want to go. But two really good image optimization plugins are Ew and Short Pixel. Ew always cracks me up when I say that word, because I feel like I'm a second grader in, was it kindergarten or pre-K? I don't know the grade levels, but you know, the little kids will, ew, like you got a booger in your nose. That's what it reminds me of. But all jokes aside, it's a really, really phenomenal caching plugin. But the one that I love the most is Short Pixel, because I've been using it long enough and it hasn't let me down yet. So I'm gonna activate it real quick. And then once you're in Short Pixel, it's gonna ask you to add your email address in there, so that way it can give you some free credits. Short Pixel is a free plugin, a free image optimization plugin, but it does come with some pro plans that'll give you extra features. So you would click this, I have read and agreed, and you would request a key. For instance, I'm just gonna do this, request a key, and then you're gonna see this dashboard or this interface right here. It's pretty self-explanatory. What I like about Short Pixel, and sometimes caching plugins are like this too, because I know somebody's watching this that probably, you know, has a different perspective than I do when it comes to caching or image optimization or optimization in general. However, I see that the image optimization plugins, because there's way less features, which there should be, and 80% of the time they're set up for you already. Sometimes 90%, where you don't need to do anything. You just add it to your website and let it do its due. But there's other times where you do want to set it up a little bit different, or you want to change some settings, okay? So that's key that I want you all to know when it comes to your image optimization. But we have 3 compression types: lossy, glossy, and lossless. Lossy is recommended. Lossy is going to give you the most compression, and lossless is going to give you the least compression, but the most quality. So lossy is going to take away some quality, but it's going to give you the most compression. Glossy is in the middle. So just keep that in mind. If I go to advanced here, we see that we can get WebP or AVIF versions. So these are also getting very, very popular and common amongst browsers to be able to convert your images, like your JPEGs and your PNGs, to a more palatable, I know that's a weird word to say in this instance, but I'm going to use that because I'm in my cooking mindset, to create a more palatable or a smaller file size that, again, it should keep a good amount of the quality, but it reduces the amount of load on your website, and it reduces the file size as well, but you want to retain as much quality as possible. So yes, you definitely want to use the WebP and the AVIF. I don't know what the acronym or what they, not the acronym, but like how they pronounce it, AVIF or AVIF. I don't know. I have no clue. You want to turn these on, okay? These are really, really good to do. And then if there's anything else you need from there, you can optimize, turn on your settings, turn settings off the way that you see fit for your website. Okay, so this is Short Pixel. So let's go back to plugins, and I'm going to deactivate Short Pixel, and let's activate you just to kind of show you real quick. All right, so with you, we have here, I know what I'm doing, leave me alone, which I really don't. I mean, I do, but I don't use EU like that. I like to be honest with this. I'm not one of those educators who wants to say, yeah, I've used this, that, and they really don't. There's so many people that be lying out there, y'all, or they used it one time or tested it and they say they use it. No, I'm giving y'all the truth. I don't use EU, but the reason why I'm recommending it is because I have a lot of colleagues, associates that use EU, and they swear by it, and I trust them. They're trusted colleagues, trusted friends, trusted associates, and EU is really, really good. I just don't need to use 15 different dishwasher detergents in order to wash my dishes. I'm just going to choose one. If that doesn't work, I'll go on to the next one. But I'm not rotating out dishwasher detergent to wash my dishes. It's just a metaphor, but that's how I think. So he was EU. As you can see here, they have WebP conversion as well, and even lazy load. So this is really, really good. Some hosting has lazy load, like host caching plugins and hosting will give you lazy load. WordPress out the box has lazy load, but you need to decide which route you want to go. Do you want to go with your WordPress native way, or do you want to go with a external way, a third-party way? Okay, so that's key. But you definitely want to have lazy load at least most of the time on your website. All lazy load is when somebody's on your website, the section or the image does not load until they get close to it. Hence lazy. We ain't say lazy boy. You ain't sitting in your chair right now. Well, maybe you are watching this. It's not that kind of a lazy, but it's lazy load. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Lazy load. Let me go back to my plugins here, install plugins, and let's deactivate. Now here's a bonus that I want to share with you all, which is okay to use in tandem with your caching, but you have to, and I repeat, you have to turn off certain settings in your caching plugin or caching tool that you're using. You have to turn off certain settings that you're using in order to not, in order to not cause conflict or friction. Because if you have settings on your caching, also with a performance tool or performance optimization tool. Now, some of you are probably thinking, well, Maestro, isn't caching a performance optimization tool? Technically, yes, it is. I completely agree with you. However, there are other tools that aren't caching tools, but they are like caching tools, and they have features of caching tools, but they're focused on performance and performance optimization only. Asset Cleanup is one of those tools. Asset Cleanup has free features for you to be able to use. It also has paid features, but it is free and it has free features. This is a plugin that I started to use once I learned that you can combine a caching plugin with a performance plugin, and we needed our websites to be even faster. Sometimes caching doesn't give you the exact level of speed that you're looking for. It gave you a boost, but you need a little bit more to get faster. This is where a performance plugin comes in, and Asset Cleanup is one of the best. Now, it's not the one that I'm currently using, but like I said, I started using this first until I found another one that I liked even more, and I'll show you that here in a second. With Asset Cleanup, you have your settings here, and this is where you would actually start setting things up. Now, you can see if you see a lock over it, it's not a free feature. However, there are so many overlapping features like optimized CSS, optimized JavaScript, local fonts, Google fonts. They even have some features that you may have in a security plugin on this, right? Again, this is all about performance. It's not caching, but performance. So this is where you want to go in and you want to optimize your website even more by using this tool. I'm telling you, it is a game changer. This is Asset Cleanup for you all, and it's a dope tool, all right? And you can turn on and off certain scripting, certain scripts, so that way things aren't always loading. And that's why I love this tool, because for instance, this is a very powerful tool when you are doing e-commerce. It can be used for anything, but especially when you're doing e-commerce or you have a third-party page builder, something like an Elementor or a Divi. where it's loading scripts on all these pages, even when you're not using the features of that tool on that page. Guess what? It's still loading those scripts and it's slowing down your website. So you want to use something like asset cleanup to get more granular, to be able to optimize page by page. That, my friends, is a sweet spot right there that it took me years after my WordPress journey to even understand that sometimes these third-party page builders or certain plugins like WooCommerce, it's going to load on everything or places where you don't want it to load and you're not even using it. That's where a tool like this comes in. Now, one of my favorite tools that's an alternative of asset cleanup is Perf Matters, except Perf Matters, it's not a free plugin. It costs, right? However, I like Perf Matters a little bit more than asset cleanup, but they are essentially the same tool. They just do things a little differently. And like I said, I like Perf Matters a little bit more than asset cleanup, and that's just my opinion on that. But essentially, they do the same thing, okay? So if you're gonna go with a performance optimization plugin, you need to decide whether you want to use asset cleanup or Perf Matters. As I mentioned in the official course, we'll dive deeper into setting those up. That's if you all are interested in them. Now, I talked about caching. I talked about image optimization. I recommended either using a plugin from the WordPress repo for caching or using your host caching plugin or their caching method. Sometimes you don't even need the plugin. Or use WP Rocket, which is universal. Most hosts, shared hosting, or managed hosting can use WP Rocket. It's compatible. The next part, I've already alluded to this before, is your CDN. There are two CDNs that I recommend that you look into and that you use. Do not use two CDNs at the same time. That's not what you want to do, one or the other. One is going to be Cloudflare. This was the CDN that I started with, and I love Cloudflare still to this day. We actually use Cloudflare with Kinsta. The beautiful part is some hosts have now integrated on the hosting level with Cloudflare. So now you don't even have to set it up yourself. They'll set it up for you through the hosting. So look into that when it comes to your host. If you don't have that availability to do so, or you can't do so, that's where you want to create a free Cloudflare account. Once you do, you'll get verification, and then you'll be able to access Cloudflare here in the backend. Now, the great part about going the host route is you don't even have to look at this anymore. I haven't seen the back end of Cloudflare in a long time. Why? Because when I was using SiteGround, they hooked up to Cloudflare automatically. Then when I started using Kinsta, they hook up to Cloudflare as well. So I haven't had to use Cloudflare from the back end side forever. However, if you need to, there are so many tutorials out there. It's ridiculous on how to set Cloudflare up. And it will not only give you a great speed boost, but it gives you protection as well. Now, here's the thing. When you're using a CDN, a content delivery network, make sure that it's necessary, because sometimes you can hurt your website using a CDN and most of your traffic is local traffic versus a content delivery network. It's better used when you have global traffic or traffic coming from other places that are not close to your main server, wherever you're hosting at. So say you're hosting in Los Angeles, California, but most of your traffic is in Washington, D.C. You might want to use a CDN, or you're hosting in, we'll say, Tokyo, Japan, right? But a lot of your traffic is coming out of the UK. That's when you want to use a CDN. So hopefully you're catching on to this drift here and this is making some sense. But if you want extra protection and you have minimal global traffic, sometimes using a CDN is also helpful. So those are just things that I would look into. Now, I use two CDNs, but not at the same time and not for the same reasons. Let me explain. I use Cloudflare through my hosts, right? As a CDN, but then I also use another CDN. I know, follow me here. We're going to get there. I use another CDN called Bunny.net. And Bunny.net, when I was first introduced to Bunny.net, it was an alternative to Cloudflare that was, for me, much easier to set up and manage. Because Cloudflare, there's just so many settings. There's just so much you can do. But at the same time, at that time, Bunny.net has not only the CDN, but it also had storage. And I was using it to store files. Then they started getting streaming for video. So Cloudflare and Bunny.net, I noticed that Cloudflare started taking some of Bunny.net's moves when it came to like stream, right? And then obviously Bunny.net came after Cloudflare. So they've kind of been, pulling each other. They've been taking each other's moves, studying each other, kind of like Apple and Google, or, the iPhone and Samsung, kind of things like that. But they are great CDNs. I love them both. I use them for different reasons. And the main difference between the two from a business model standpoint is Buddy.net does not have a free tier. There's no freebie with Buddy.net. However, you'll get pennies on the dollar. I kid you not. When I say that I added $50 5 years ago, I think it's 5 years ago, and I haven't ran out of that yet, it's pennies on the dollar. As long as you don't have crazy amounts of traffic. Now, if you got crazy amounts of traffic, well, that's different. We ain't talk about people with crazy amounts of traffic. If you have normal amounts of traffic, you put $50 in there, you put $20 in there, you know what I'm saying? You put $10 in there, that's gonna last you a long time. I'm trying to tell you, it's gonna last you a long time. And they have a 14-day trial period where you get 1 terabyte of bandwidth, right? So it's something that you can try out 14 days, and if you like it, put your credit card information in there and continue. Put that 20 in there, put that 30 in there, whatever you got to do. But it works wonders. I can't applaud them enough. I love them both, Cloudflare and Buddy.net. The main, outside of the business model, the main difference I would say from a technical standpoint that I'm not a fan of with Cloudflare, and the reason why I'm glad I have to use it through my hosting, the reason why I'm glad I use it through my hosting is because with Cloudflare, you have to give up your DNS. What do I mean by that? You have to allow Cloudflare to manage your DNS records, and I don't always like that. That annoyed me. I like my hosting or my domain name provider, my domain name registrar. That word's so weird. I like to do my management of my DNS either through my domain, where I bought my domain, or where I host my websites. I don't like to do it through Cloudflare. It just was too much for me, and I started getting really annoyed. So that's the main difference. With Buddy.net, you don't have to change DNS. You don't have to move over your DNS, your domain name server, to Buddy.net. With Cloudflare, if you're not going through a host, for the most part, as long as I've been using it, you have to use their DNS to manage your records. That's key right there. If you need to do that, if you don't want to do that, then don't even think about using Cloudflare. Go with Buddy.net. So you got to give and take, right? You have Cloudflare that has a free tier, but it's going to take over your DNS. Like that's what you're giving up for that. But then you have Buddy.net that has only paid subscription. However, again, it's very, very cheap to pay for, and you don't have to give up your DNS records. So this is what I would use as well to boost my speed. These are the main strategies, or I guess it would be tactics. So my overall strategy is using these together in a very intentional way. But the tactics are, you need cache. You got to have a caching plugin. You want to have an image optimization plugin. Then you want to think about, do you need a performance optimization plugin like an asset cleanup or a perf matters? And then you also want to think about, do I need a CDN, a content delivery network? Those are the 4, I would say, tactics I would use in order to optimize my website, and that will put you up there in a stratosphere. Now, we can get deeper and say, well, what kind of page building tools are you using? How many plugins do you have on your website? This ain't for that. But I'll say in a nutshell, the more plugins you have, the slower your website gonna be. And if you're using a third-party page builder, you're automatically adding bloat to your website. You can argue that to the grave. So if you're not using Gutenberg, the native page builder in WordPress's solution for building out your pages, if you're not using that and you're adding a third-party page builder, well, you're automatically going to drop down some levels of speed. It is what it is. I'm not telling you not to use it. What I am saying is you need to understand that truth. You're automatically going to lose some speed. So that's why it's important for you to understand these things. But no matter what you use, whether you're going with Gutenberg, the WordPress editor, or you're using a third-party page builder, these things that I just showed you right now in this lesson, these are the ways that you get your website at a 90 or above. And now let's talk about that, since we are at the tail end of this lesson, for testing the website. So if you are testing your website, you want to use, I would say, one of 3, if not all 3 of the tools that I'm going to show you right now. The first one you definitely want to use and take into account is PageSpeed Insights by Google. You want to use this one. If I were you, this is the 800-pound gorilla more than anything, because it's a Google-based tool, and most of us are trying to get fast to appease Google. Let's keep it all the way real. It's only some of us that are trying to get fast for Bing or for Yahoo, for whatever other search engines are out there. But most of us, when it comes to our search engine optimization and SEO and we'll save that for another lesson. We are trying to get fast for Google. So use Google's tool, but just don't count on Google's tool. Use a second opinion, like a doctor giving a diagnosis. Google is diagnosing your website. Get a second opinion. So another tool you can use would be GTmetrix. This is a great speed test tool. It's also free. However, if you want to test for mobile speed, you got to pay for it. Google will show you mobile and desktop. GTmetrix is only going to show you desktop unless you pay for mobile. So this is one way to do it. Another tool is Pingdom, and this tool is the tool that I actually started with back in the day when I was testing websites before I heard of GTmetrix and before Google's Page Speed Insights got more popular. Before they created this tool, it was Pingdom back in the day. This was the one that for me is like the origin story. This was the one that started it all. However, I started using Page Speed and GTmetrix even more. Now I use all three, but I always start with Page Speed Insights, and I look at these scores, and then I compare the scores to see what is the pattern, what is the general. I don't let one make the decision for me as far as, well, I'm getting fast speeds on this one, and this one weighs higher than the other one. Nope. I want to get an average score between the three. So once you do all your optimization with your tools, go here, Page Speed Insights, GTmetrix, and Pingdom, and you will get some really good information back at you that will let you know is what you have done, was the juice worth the squeeze, okay? So the whole point is it'll let you know, was your efforts worth it? That's the key. So hopefully you all got something out of this lesson as far as my thought process when it comes to optimizing a WordPress website for speed. These are the things that I do for every website. I think about this. Do I need this? Do I need that? Obviously, I'm gonna need a caching plugin. That's always mandatory. In my opinion, you need caching. You also need image optimization. In my opinion, that's also mandatory. Caching and image optimization. Performance optimization, that's as needed. Because if you don't need it, if your website is fast without performance optimization, don't add it to your website. Don't add more extra stuff just because you think that it's gonna make your website faster, because sometimes it can hurt your site. There could be conflicts. And then when it comes to a CDN, that's another do I need it, a case-by-case basis scenario. So you have your caching and image optimization. That should be mandatory. And then you have your performance optimization and your CDN. That should be on a case-by-case basis. All right? My name is Maestro Stevens with Iconic Templates, and I'm out. Peace.